Okay, you're given this function, natural log of the square root of the absolute value of 1 minus x squared. You're asked to find the domain of the function and then find the derivative of that function. The things to consider: the parameter to the natural logarithmic function must be greater than 0, and the parameter to square root must be greater than or equal to 0. So that means this expression right here must be greater than 0. In order for that to be true, you have to be taking the square root of a positive number. So that means the absolute value of 1 minus x squared must be greater than 0. The only time it equals 0 is when x is 1 or negative 1. Everywhere else, this expression is positive because you're taking the absolute value. So the only numbers you have to exclude from the domain are 1 and negative 1. So here it is using set builder notation. Here it is, the domain, using interval notation. Now, to make sure you know what's happening when you find the derivative, it's a good idea to rewrite the function without the absolute value symbols. So when x is less than negative 1, let me go to blue right here, the absolute value of 1 minus x squared can be written this way, because we're actually taking, since this is a negative number in here, if we take the opposite of that, you'll have a positive number, and the absolute value of positive is still a positive number. So we want to take the opposite of this, which is x squared minus 1. In a similar fashion, when x is between negative 1 and 1, the expression inside is already positive, so we can just drop the absolute value symbol. And then for this x greater than 1, similar to what happened when x was less than negative 1. So let's focus on taking the derivative here. When x is between negative 1 and 1, we can rewrite the square root of 1 minus x squared, the square root of the absolute value of 1 minus x squared, just like that, without the absolute value symbol. And so if we take the derivative, we put 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared, take the derivative of the inside by the chain rule, 1/2, 1 minus x squared to the minus 1/2, chain rule again, derivative of the inside, negative 2x. The 2's cancel. Take this square root to the denominator, and we get opposite of x over 1 minus x squared. Well, if you factor out a negative from the denominator, rewrite it this way, the negatives cancel out. And so you could rewrite it this way, either one. If we do the same pattern here for these two rows, you can rewrite the absolute value as x squared minus 1 with no absolute value symbol. Take the derivative just like we did over here. We get this because these 2's cancel. Oh, but if we wanted to, we could rewrite it as negative x over 1 minus x squared. So either of these is a derivative, and it doesn't matter what x is as long as x doesn't equal 1 or negative 1. And here's kind of proof. Here's f of x, the square root of the absolute value. Here's g of x. G of negative 1 and g of 1 are undefined. And then these graphs over here are all graphs of these functions. They all match. Okay, so I'd probably give this as my answer. There you go. Hope that helped. If you have any questions, post a comment.